Morning. It's now 9:04 a.m. and I'm calling the meeting to order. With our agenda posting, we invited members of the public to view a broadcast of the Executive Committee meeting, which is live at www.youtube.com/State Bar of Texas. We also provided instructions on how to sign up to speak at today's meeting. Sign-ups were available until 5 p.m. Central Time yesterday. Members of the public will speak under agenda item 3, and those members of the public joining remotely will remain in the Zoom waiting room until it's their turn to speak. Please note that this meeting will be recorded and the recording will be made available to the public. And at this time, I'd like to call on Executive Director Trey Apfel for the roll call.
Thank you, Madam President. Committee members, please say aye or here when your name is called. Mr. Almanzan. Here. Ms. Brooker. Here. Mr. Baruch. Here. Mr. Cavillo. Here. Mr. Carlos Cardenas. Here. Ms. Cordova.
Here.
Ms. Barunda Firth.
Here.
Ms. Gibson.
Here.
Mr. Ginn as an excused absence. Ms. Harrison.
Here.
Justice Learman.
Here.
Mr. McDougall.
Here.
Ms. Rispoli is on her way. Ms. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Schrammick.
Here.
Ms. St. Ives Brewer has an excused absence. Mr. Vargas.
Here.
Madam President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Trey. At this time, we would like to welcome any members of the public who have signed up to speak. Any member of the public joining us in person who wishes to speak should sign a blue sign-in card and return it to staff. If there is a specific topic of discussion or agenda item you would like to speak on, please list that on the card. If members of the public have signed up to speak remotely, you will remain in the Zoom waiting room until it is your turn to speak, and I will address you to indicate when you may begin. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak, and we will notify you when your time is complete. Do we have any speakers? No one has signed up to speak, and so the comment period is now closed. During the remainder of the meeting, if there are board members or staff who wish to speak, please approach the podium and I will let you know when it is your turn to speak. At this time, we're going to go out of agenda, and I'd like to welcome Justice Learman to the podium to make her liaison report from the Texas Supreme Court. Justice Learman.
Thank you so much, Madam President, and thank you all on behalf of the court for all that you all do as leaders within the bar. We appreciate it more than we can say. It's so important always, and certainly it has been over the last several years more than ever. So thank you all very much. You volunteer your time, you give and give and give, and we all appreciate it very much. And to the staff, we have the greatest staff in the world, and thank you for all you do, and that goes to every one of you. We really appreciate it. So we have a new member on the court that most of you may know who replaced Justice Eva Guzman, and that is Justice Young. He is just absolutely wonderful. Those of you who don't know him, he is brilliant, hardworking, and nice. And all three of those things are so important. So we welcome him aboard. With regard to COVID, we're hoping this is finally behind us. So far, we've issued 49 emergency orders. On March 22nd, we extended the general emergency order to June, and hopefully that is going to be the end of it. This order was essentially unchanged from our last one. Most courts throughout the state seem to be back to normal, except for a handful of parental termination cases and courts that are being monitored by our regional presiding judges. They have the authority to extend trial deadlines not more than 60 days, and hopefully this is the last time that there will be a need for that kind of thing. The emergency order maintains the authority for remote proceedings until we can get a written rule. That has been sent to SCAC, our Supreme Court Advisory Committee, who is taking this under consideration. If you all have any views about this in terms of the need for virtual proceedings, please let that committee know because it's important information. The court has also renewed the emergency order concerning the Texas eviction diversion program. The Treasury has announced that the state of Texas will receive an additional $74 million. Harris County, Houston, and San Antonio have done very well with regard to this, receiving $9 million, $6.25 million, and $4.25 million respectively. And Texas has only trailed California and New York in the reallocation amounts. With regard to seizure exemption, in December, the court issued an order giving preliminary approval to rules and forms designed to notify judgment debtors of the personal property exemption rights and to assist them in inserting those rights. The public comment period ended early in March, and we, as always, are carefully combing through all of those comments. We will issue a final order as we are directed to by the legislature by May 1st. With regard to the Code of Judicial Conduct, in January, the court gave final approval to amendment to Canon 6B to allow constitutional county court judges to act as arbitrators and mediators. The code has allowed justices of the peace and municipal court judges to have an ADR practice, so this simply makes the rules consistent, and that rule was effective immediately. With regard to the disciplinary rules, the court amended comment 10 to the disciplinary rule, which is effective immediately, and it clarifies if a lawyer advertises a verdict amount that was never collected, the lawyer must also disclose the amount actually received by the client. With regard to the Board of Law Examiners, in February, we amended the rules governing admission to the bar to allow applicants to extend the uniform bar exam transfer allowance. So right now, an applicant can transfer his UBE score if it's less than 2 years old, or if it's 2.5 years old and the lawyer has been practicing for 3 years. This change allows for a straight 5-year UBE transfer allowance consistent with other states' rules and with our own rules that deal with some of the states who don't utilize the UBE. With regard to local rules, we preliminarily approved a change to our local rules approval process just last week. It's to take effect January 1st. And under our proposed rules, the court will no longer require court approval of local rules. However, we have made it clear that the local rules, the local forms, and standing orders cannot conflict with other state or federal laws. We've added a requirement to post all local rules, forms, and standing orders on the OCA website, unless for some reason they're not effective. And there will be a review process at the back end so that and regional presiding judges and the Supreme Court may direct changes or withdraw rules that are deemed to be inappropriate. With regard to veterans grant, we recently approved the distribution of over $1.1 million in grants to 4 legal aid organizations throughout the state to support direct legal services for veterans and their family members. So we've been busy, as you all have been busy. Thank you all again for all you do.
Thank you, Justice Lerman. And at this time, I'd like to call on our Executive Director, Trey Outfeld, for his report.
Thank you again, Madam President, and welcome members of the committee. It's good to have people back in the building. Want to give you some updates on where we are from the State Bar standpoint. Throughout the pandemic, the State Bar of Texas has remained fully operational and fully functional, with the exception of in-person meetings and activities. As COVID-19 caseloads have declined, we've been able to resume more in-person activities and bring more of our staff back into the office. In fact, since I last reported to this committee in January, all State Bar staff members have returned to our offices in person under our new 3-2 hybrid work plan. The 3-2 plan allows eligible employees to work up to 2 days remotely each week at their manager's discretion and work in the office 3 days each week. I believe it's important to have in-person interaction between coworkers, between staff and managers, and then between departments. I believe it contributes to our efforts toward collaboration, clarity, and consistency. I also want to make sure we maintain the highest levels of customer support here at the Law Center and through our call centers for both our members and the public. So we are ensuring that all departments have coverage in the office during business hours, Monday through Friday. At the same time, it's important to recognize and offer some remote work flexibility to ensure that the State Bar continues to be able to attract and retain good staff, good employees. We have provided training to all of our supervisors on best practices in managing a hybrid work staff. Also, all employees are receiving training this week on how to work successfully in a hybrid work environment. I want to report that things are going well so far, and I'm proud of our staff for the effort that they're making. With regard to the 2022 annual meeting, speaking of in-person activities, the planning is full speed ahead for this event to take place in person, and it will be our first in-person State Bar annual meeting since 2019. I can't believe I'm saying that. The 2022 annual meeting is June 9th and 10th in Houston at the Marriott Marquis. If you are interested in sponsorships, please let us know. We're excited to be able to travel to President Barun II's hometown of El Paso later this month for our board meeting. While we're there, we will host a free in-person CLE on April 27 for solo and small firm practitioners. This is a popular CLE program that we haven't been able to offer since COVID. The tradition of holding the free CLE in conjunction with the State Bar board meeting started in 2013 under the leadership of President Lisa Tatum. And I had the privilege of being able to continue that as president immediately following her. It has continued regularly since then up until the pandemic. And now we are able to institute it again for the first time since the pandemic. We're happy to bring it back this month as an outreach to lawyers in El Paso, and I believe that it will be well received. I want to thank President Barun I, Chair Santos Vargas, and Directors Kimberly Pack Wilson and Nitin Sud, and TLAP Director Erica Grigg for agreeing to speak at the April 27 event. Attendees will receive 2.5 hours of CLE credit, including a half hour of ethics credit. Registration is open now on the Texas Bar CLE website. From time to time, I like to update you on the State Bar staff members who are involved in leadership positions with some of our national associations that we are involved with. Today, I have good news to share about Erica Rodriguez, our MCLE director. I'm proud to report that Erica is in line to become president of CLE Reg, which is the Continuing Legal Education Regulators Association. Its purpose is to provide an opportunity for discussion and exchange of information among administrators of MCLE programs nationwide. I consider this to be a big deal, and I'm proud of Erica for stepping up and taking on this leadership role. And this is just illustrative of many of our State Bar staff who have served in these leadership roles in many of these national organizations. Erica joined the CLE Reg Planning Committee in 2020. The committee is responsible for planning educational and networking opportunities related to developments in CLE regulations and how other states administer MCLE. I think we've got the top person in the country heading this organization on a national level, but that also means we've got the top person in the country heading our operation here in Austin. In July of 2021, Erica was elected secretary and became part of the CLE Reg Executive Committee that maintains and represents membership in 46 mandatory CLE jurisdictions. She will become CLE Reg president in July of 2023. So if you do get a chance to see her or talk to her, please pass on your accolades to her. Yesterday, excuse me. Yesterday, I want to make sure I say this loud and clear. The Supreme Court of the United States denied the plaintiff's petition for writ of certiorari in the McDonald v. Firth case. It also denied cert in the Shell, which was the Oklahoma case, and Taylor, which was the Michigan case. There were no public dissenting opinions issued. Conference was held last Friday. The notification of cert denied came out Monday morning at about 7:30 a.m. is what I saw. We're very proud of the extraordinary work of our entire legal team: Tom Leatherberry, Josh Johnson, Pat Mizell, and Morgan Kelly of Vincent Elkins, and our own Brad Johnson and Chris Ritter in our legal counsel's office. I also want to give a shout out to our past legal counsel and associate executive director, John Sermon, who worked many, many hours and years on this case, along with Don Jones, our revered friend and leader in our legal department as well. I also want to thank Mary Scott and Rebecca Brooker for their work on our litigation ad hoc subcommittee work in providing their leadership, their oversight, and their counsel to us both internally and also to our legal counsel with B&E. And I also want to make note that we've had three to 4 years of past board members who have served in those capacities as Mary Scott and Rebecca Brooker, who have also provided great counsel and oversight to us as well. And I want to thank them while we're doing that. And then lastly, I want to make sure I mention Ross Fisher, our general counsel, who has continued to provide general counsel leadership and counsel to us as well. It's been a great team effort. We've appreciated everyone's contributions to the effort. And we believe, we have always maintained that we believe we were on the right side of the argument. There are, I believe, over 30 state bars throughout the country who operate under a mandatory or integrated bar structure. That structure has been upheld as being constitutional, as being functional, and certainly what I feel is the best in the country. And that's from a self-regulatory standpoint. So I've always highlighted the self-regulation piece of this effort. And I believe that with this decision from the Supreme Court, our right of self-regulation will continue unimpeded from this point forward. Madam President, that completes my report.
Thank you, Trey. And thank you, Trey, for your leadership throughout all of the work that needed to be done to get us to this point. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from any of the directors at this point with regard to the executive director report? Well, if there are none, we'll move forward and I'll begin my report. The first quarter of the year was a little bit slow starting because of the pandemic and the variant. But starting with February again, I received many invitations to speak on behalf of the bar. I did a presentation for the paralegal division of the bar. I visited Baylor during their orientation. I attended National Conference of Bar Presidents. I attended a litigation section SBOT Legend Ceremony in El Paso. I attended Texas Tech University Diversity Luncheon, the Tarrant County Bar Association, and the Western States Bar Conference. So everybody's up and running. The local bars are anxious to have news about the state bar, and it's been my pleasure to represent us at those events. I'm going to give you a little bit of an update with regard to the building planning special committee. As you know, Jerry Alexander is the chair, and he will give a more in-depth report at the April board meeting in El Paso. The subcommittees have been meeting to come up with ideas for the potential uses of the building at 415 Lavaca. We've discussed the potential to develop the building as an educational center for meeting and conference space as opposed to office space, but we've not made any firm decisions yet. We've received some thoughtful ideas from State Bar staff members, and we're sorting through all of those ideas as well. We've issued a request for qualifications to 29 architectural firms, and we received 3 responses. The committee will conduct interviews next week on April 13th, and we hope to select one of the groups soon thereafter. All 3 respondents have exceptional experience in working with historical buildings. So now we know we have a difficult decision ahead of us. And once we select an architect, we will enter into a contract and begin the design phase of the project. And we'll be keeping the board apprised of our progress. Does anybody have any questions or comments with regard to the building? Not being any, I will move forward with an update with regard to the at-large director appointments. There are 4 at-large director positions on the State Bar Board. And at the annual meeting this June, the terms will expire for the positions currently held by Luis Cardenas and Andy Almanzan. Board policy spells out a process to fill those positions. December 1st was the deadline to submit nominations to the State Bar. This year, 10 really exceptional nominations were received for consideration. The ad hoc committee to select at-large directors reviewed the nominations, conducted interviews, and submitted 4 nominees for my consideration. I want to add that they interviewed everyone that applied. And so they did quite a bit of work. I conducted my own interview with the 4 nominees, and they were really incredible candidates with tremendous experience and volunteer service. I have to tell you that I think it was probably the most difficult choice that I've had to make as a president to select the 2 at-large members, but I did select 2. I selected Abby Katoon of Houston and Elizabeth Sandoval Cantu of Edinburgh. Abby Katoon is a graduate of the University of Houston Law Center and has a degree in chemical engineering from the University of Houston as well. She practices labor and employment law at Reed Smith and is board certified in that area. Abby has an impressive resume of service in the legal profession. She served as chair of the African American Lawyers section of the State Bar and has served in many volunteer leadership roles in the city of Houston. Elizabeth Sandoval Cantu graduated from St. Mary's School of Law and obtained her undergraduate degree from Santa Clara University. She practices civil and commercial litigation at the firm of Ramon Worthington. Elizabeth has served in various roles at the Hidalgo County Bar Association and many other civic organizations in the Rio Grande Valley. These appointments will be presented for consideration at the April board meeting, and I know they will both be great board members, and we look forward to working with them. The committee that brought forward the nominees was chaired by Andy Almanzan, and the members are Kelly Ann Clark, Brittany Harrison, Yolanda Cortez Mares, Kimberly Pack Wilson. And I want to thank you all for the hard work that was done by the ad hoc committee and for your great work in the selection. Anybody have any questions or comments with regard to that? We'll move forward then with the approval of the minutes for the January 11th, 2022 meeting. Any director who wishes to second, I need a motion, and any director who wishes to second the motion, please state your name so we have a record. We have a motion in a second?
So moved.
We have a motion from Santos Vargas, and I need a second. Second from Rebecca Brooker. All directors who are in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That unanimously approved. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call upon our chair of the board, Santos Vargas, for his report.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Now, I'll be brief with my report today. A couple of updates on what's going on with the chair position. I had the pleasure of representing the State Bar at the National Bar Association mid-year conference in Houston a couple of weeks ago. And this was actually the invitation of one of our former State Bar directors, Goodwill Pierre, who's very active in the National Bar Association. Wonderful group lawyers. They were very excited to hear from us, and they were very appreciative that we were there. And hopefully we can, if they continue to have conferences in the state of Texas, we can continue representing the state bar. But it was a great group. And it was not only a great opportunity to meet with members of the National Bar Association, but also a great opportunity to highlight some of our diversity programs, including our plan to bring back the Texas Diversity Roundtable later this year in the fall, in conjunction with the Texas Minority Assistance Program. And so anyway, they really gave us a warm welcome, and we're very happy to have us there, and very glad that I was able to represent the state bar there. Another update from the chair of the board position. We have in our April board meeting coming up in El Paso, we're going to have the election for the 2022-2023 chair of the board. We have 4 outstanding candidates, including 2 of which are here with us today, Mr. Chad Baruch and David Calvillo, as well as Lucy Forbes and Todd Smith. I can tell you I've heard nothing but good things from all of them, and about all of them in the way that they're running this chair race. And so all I can say is that I'm very proud. I know how tough this race can be from firsthand experience, and just keep on working hard. And I know that we're going to produce an outstanding chair at our April board meeting. Thank you all. That's it.
Thank you, Santos. Are there any comments or questions from the directors? There are none. Then we'll move forward with the report from our president-elect. At this time, I'd like to call on President-elect Lori Gibson.
Thank you, Sylvia, and good morning, everyone. Since our last meeting in January, in addition to participating in all of the committee meetings of the State Bar Board that are held via Zoom, I've had the opportunity to attend the ABA Leadership Institute in Chicago with Trey from March 16th through the 18th. And we really had an opportunity to participate in a lot of very informative programs. It was the first in-person program in a long time. And I think people's attention spans were much longer than I typically have an attention span versus, when we participate in Zoom. But I am happy to report that we are learning from the experiences we had through Zoom. And there were a number of presentations that incorporated Zoom participants in the program. So if someone had something on their calendar and they couldn't make the trip to Chicago, they were still able to participate in the program via Zoom. So it was a really nice combination of both technologies that allowed us to hear from people that probably from budget perspectives, we wouldn't be able to hear from. So it was a great program. We learned a lot. We learned a lot about strategies for communicating with our members. Trey and I had an exercise on mapping our communication messages, and we're going to be working with Lowell Brown to bring some of those techniques to our board members next year. Last week, I joined Sylvia and Trey at the Western States Bar Conference. There are 16 states in the Western Conference of Bar Presidents. We in Texas are privileged because we're part of the Southern Bar Conference and also the Western States Bar Conference. And I can tell you that Texas does an amazing job in both conferences representing our state. Trey has done a fabulous job getting to know all of the executive directors, and he's in a unique position having served as a past president of the State Bar of Texas. And I can tell you that everybody in the Western States Bar Conference thinks that Trey Apfel is a rock star, and that by virtue of that we are rock stars. So it was great to be with fellow regulatory bars, and they were all very anxious to hear about what was going on with McDonald, and we're very supportive of our efforts. And I know that they are celebrating the continuation of our ability to self-regulate as we are today. I also have the privilege of serving as the chair of the Redistricting Task Force. You may remember that this task force is charged with reviewing the apportionment of the state bar districts to determine whether we need to make any changes. And as I reported in January, the last change that was made to the director positions was in 2012, when Houston gave up a director seat, and that was apportioned to Austin in order to take into account the expanded population of attorneys here in Austin. Otherwise, there haven't been any recent changes to the way that we are districted. We've had several meetings to look at the current population of attorneys in each district, and we looked specifically at the ratio of our directors to the population of our attorneys in each community to see if there were any imbalances in the representation. As part of our review, we gathered input from our attorney members. We published an article in the Texas Bar Journal in January inviting input from all Texas attorneys. Director Steve Fisher spoke to our task force and provided us with very useful information and ideas about the district population. We also received suggestions that I'll detail in a moment from Joe Longley, our past president. And what we determined is that there have been no significant changes in the director to attorney population ratios over the last 10 years. We did note that the attorney population in Collin County has seen a steady increase over the past 10 years. Since Collin County is in District 1, this has caused that district's population to increase by 31%, which is a growth of 1,098 from 2010 to 2020. So in that 10-year period, Collin County has increased by almost 1,100 attorneys. Now, the largest metro districts, which are Houston, which is Harris County, Dallas, Travis, and Bexar County, also continue to see the largest growth in the number of attorneys. So despite the significant growth in Collin County, our metropolitan areas are where we're seeing the most growth in our attorney populations. So trying to see whether we needed to do anything about the growth in Collin County, we looked at the surrounding districts in North Texas to see what would happen if we moved Collin County to one of those districts. But what we found is there wasn't a clear and easy path to make this happen. Making shifts created issues and imbalances in the surrounding districts, which we didn't think improved any situation. So while there has been an increase in Collin County, we don't believe that that increase is significant enough to warrant any changes to the districts. We have asked the staff to monitor closely the ratio of the districts in the next few years to keep the board updated on any significant changes. As I mentioned previously, Joe Longley submitted a proposal to the task force to consider single member representation of bar districts. He suggested that instead of the 17 county-based districts that we move to a 30 district division based upon zip code populations of lawyers in our state. He suggested that each of the 30 districts have the same defined population. So add up the total number of attorneys in Texas, divide it by 30, and that's the amount of attorneys that would need to be in each of the 30 districts. So we did some modeling to see what that would look like if we did the 30 directors based upon the total population divided by 30. And what we found is that there would only be 3 directors who would represent the western half of the state. And those directors would have to represent districts that stretched hundreds of miles. Looking at the map on the set number of attorneys by zip code, we also found that dividing it by zip codes was really problematic. For instance, in Houston, there are so many attorneys in downtown Houston, which is 77010, that we would have to have 2 districts in 77010. So you'd have some people, maybe one side of Main Street that were in one district and some on the other side, which are in a different district. And, you would have to, and if you switched firms or moved offices, so a director wouldn't even know who he or she was representing if we were to move to that model. So because of those difficulties and because we really didn't think that it would be a fair representation to the Western District of our state if they only had 3 districts, given that there isn't a lot of similarity in those populations and that as easy as communications have gotten, they are still not flawless, and there is no substitution, as we know, having our first in-person executive committee meeting for as long as I can remember, there is no substitute for in-person communication. So we felt that that would be unfair to our Western districts to change that, go to those single member districts. So in summary, the task force decided that redistricting was not appropriate. So we are not making a recommendation that redistricting change in any regard. That concludes my report on behalf of the task force. And so I entertain questions if Madam Chair would like.
Are there any questions or comments with regard to Laura's redistricting report? I want to thank Laura. Oh, you do great.
As far as I understand, I'm going to redistrict, but of the reallocation of seat space. How often do we do that?
The State Bar Act requires us to do it from time to time. That's the language in the statute. And so we determined that we would do it this year because we had new sense, just like every other governmental entity. So at my request, you all approved the creation of the task force, and that's why we did it this year. And as somebody from the far west part of the state, when we saw the modeling that was done, it was really an overwhelming burden to expect somebody to represent a district that was stretched all the way from El Paso far into Midland. And it's just there, and there really is no common interest with those legal communities. And so we thought we would be doing a disservice. The other issue is even though we asked for comment from local bar groups to see if anybody felt like there was any concern or they were underrepresented, et cetera, we did not receive anything. So we don't believe at this time it's necessary to make any kind of adjustment. That's the recommendation of the task force at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anybody else? There being no other questions, I'm going to ask Laura to continue with her budget report.
And I want to thank all the members of the redistricting task force for their hard work. Everybody's assigned committees at the outset of the bar year. And when we have an important assignment like redistricting, like we had here, that requires us to tap our resources even further. So to those of you who helped me with the redistricting process, I appreciate you and express my gratitude. Now I want to turn to the budget committee. You'll recall that we presented the budget at our January meeting. There have not been any changes to the budget since that presentation. Your packet includes a copy of the proposed budget, which was published in the March issue of the Texas Bar Journal. The State Bar, our finances webpage includes a detailed report of the proposed fiscal 2022-2023 budget. You'll remember that's a new document this year, and it includes a summary of the exact individual budget of the State Bar and a breakdown of the revenues and expenditures by each department budget. The public hearing on our budget will be next week, Monday, April 11 at 10 o'clock here at the Texas Law Center. And the public are invited to be here and to ask us questions about that budget. After we hold that public meeting next Monday and we receive our public comment, it may be necessary for the budget committee to meet again to consider those comments to the budget. We anticipate that I will be making a motion at our meeting in April in El Paso to ask the board to approve the budget that we will present to the Supreme Court pending board approval. And that meeting with the court will be held on May 9th. That concludes my report on behalf of the budget committee.
Is there any questions or comments about the budget? None? Okay, then we'll keep moving forward. And the next I will call on immediate past President Larry McDougall for his report.
Good morning and thank you. As the report from the past president, I just have one thing, and I think it's a bit of really good news. Back in 2019, when we were working on the proposed budget for the next year, we added a new position to TLAP. But because of COVID, we put hiring freezes in place, which is fully understandable. Well, I've received word now that TLAP has hired their new position. John Jacobs out of Houston is their new TLAP employee, which puts us at 3 lawyers and 1 counselor. Correct, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. And I think that's a big plus for the lawyers of Texas, that we have a full-time staff like that, staff with 3 lawyers and professional counselor to assist lawyers in their time of need. And Madam President, as far as the past president's report, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall. Are there any questions or comments from directors with regard to that report? There being none, we'll move forward with our policy manual subcommittee chaired by Adam Schrammick. Director Schrammick, come forward. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry about
Okay.
that. Sorry.
I'll sit down. and-
I'm sorry, it's like, why is Larry still standing here? I'm sorry. We need our nominations and elections subcommittee report from Mr. McDougall. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, that's why I was still standing there. All right. As far as nominations and elections go, this is going to be kind of brief, and I'm just going to speed through it. If you don't know, our election started April 1st. We have Joe Escobedo of Edinburgh and Cindy Tisdale of Granbury, Texas, that are running in our next upcoming election. No petition candidates filed this year, so it's just going to be down to those two. We changed things up in the past year, so this year there's something kind of new. There's videos. We have 2 written messages where you can watch on YouTube and see our candidates and hear from them in person. The first one was out on March 31st, and the second one will be sent out on April 20th. You will get an email message on April 13th and 27th. They'll be sent out. So you can watch them on social media or the State Bar website, actually. You may recall in September, the board passed a policy requiring the candidates to conduct 2 forums. The first one was held on March 10th, and I think we had about 75 people attend. The second one's going to be scheduled for today at noon. So if you have a chance, watch it, and you can hear from our candidates. And is Charlie even going to be there? Yes. Okay. So myself and Charlie will be handling that, so you can watch and hear from our candidates in person. We have featured candidates in the April issue of the Adjourn and the April episode of the State Bar podcast. We're sending out communications. If some of you haven't received your ballots by mail, and I am one of them that haven't received them, they're a little slow coming out, but they will get to you. But you can vote online, going to the State Bar website, signing in, and you can cast your votes now. As I stated, the election started April 1st. And so you can go ahead and start. The election actually ends on May 2nd, and the results are going to be released that night. We also have candidates that are running for director positions. And it's very important that if you consider the directors in your district and vote for them, consider who's running and who you want. I said I was going to keep it short. The only other thing is check your spam filter, your junk filter, because I've been hearing from people that the emails and such that have been going out for some reason this year, a lot of them have been winding up there. And I checked, and that's where mine went. So if you, I got a State Bar email address, and mine still went. So if y'all want to check those, double check. But anyway, voting is live. I encourage every lawyer in Texas to vote. You know, you keep hearing us talking about self-governance. Well, the first element of self-governance is voting and electing your representatives. And I think it's very important that we do so. And with that, Madam President, I conclude my report.
Thank you, President McDougall. And I'd like to echo the encouragement to vote. We've just been through the long, hard battle on self-governance. And so let's evidence the fact that we value that privilege. And please vote yourself and remind your lawyer friends to do the same. We make it as easy as possible online, takes literally just minutes. And if you prefer, mail them in, but please make your choice and vote. Okay, now, Mr. Schrammick. Come forward, please. Thank you.
Exactly. All right, I'll keep it really short because there's nothing to vote on today, but I wanted to give you a heads up as to what's coming to the next executive committee meeting. We met, the policy committee met on March 10th to address what was referred to us from the board meeting last time, as you might recall, which is the creation of what we're calling the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We had a very good conversation, a very healthy discussion about what this committee should look like. How is it different from the Diversity and the Profession Committee? What should its purpose be? What should its membership be? And those all raised such good questions that we're going to have some more meetings of the policy committee before we come to y'all with a recommendation. We have 2 meetings on the books before the next executive committee. I think at that point, we will have a recommendation. We'll be able to answer these questions, and we'll have a proposal for the executive committee to approve at the next meeting, such that by the last meeting of the bar year, we will have a vote on the creation of the new standing committee. Any questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Schrammick, and thank you for your leadership on that committee. We have had some of the hard discussions that come from DEI discussions, and that your leadership has been very valuable. And are there any questions or comments with regard to that report? There being none, we'll move forward with our Audit and Finance Committee report. And for that, I'll recall on Director David Calvillo. Mr. Calvillo.
Morning, everybody. I'd just like to report that it actually took me 30 seconds to vote electronically for the state board president. So I would encourage you guys again to vote. It's my pleasure to talk about audit and finance and give you a little update on the first 9 months of our fiscal year. You know, I get a little excited talking about audit and finance. And so I wanted to remind everybody that we're talking about a $43 million budget in annual revenues. And this is just the first 9 months. For the first 9 months, the bar continues to be on very solid grounds. And when compared to budget in particular, we have a very positive variance, positive in the sense that we are over budget, in the sense that we have a surplus. That surplus is about $4.5 million. It's a positive variance to the state bar. Most of that, as you might imagine, are from savings realized from not having to travel quite as much for meetings and conferences and the like. So we're realizing that benefit. As we go forward, we might see a decrease in that, but maybe now that we see we can be hyper efficient, uber efficient, whatever word you want to use, maybe we can narrow that gap a little bit and continue to realize some of the benefits of in-person meetings, but still realize some of the benefits of the virtual at the same time. Revenues have increased a little bit over budget, not quite to pre-pandemic levels, but they're still favorable to the bar. One quick update, you may recall that there's 2 groups of auditors that serve the state bar. One is the external audit, and one is the internal audit. The external audit is the independent firm that evaluates the financial statements that the bar puts together and then tells us whether those are prepared, you know, in generally accepted accounting principles. With respect to the internal audit is more of a function that looks at the internal controls. And we're here to report that the Audit and Finance Committee has selected for board recommendation the firm of McConnell and Jones. If that name sounds familiar, it's because they're the ones that have served the bar in that capacity before. So at the meeting in April, we'll have that finalized and ready for board approval. The McConnell and Jones firm was the only one that submitted a proposal, but we feel comfortable that because of their vast experience in this area, that they're the ones to select. So we've got some other reasons why they got that the nod of the Audit and Finance Committee. They're also a historically underutilized business in that it is minority owned and a veteran owned small business. So we're very, very pleased with the audit selection. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Mr. Calvillo. Are there any questions or comments from the directors present? There being none, we are going to move forward. At this time, are we taking a break? Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute break. So we'll come back at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's continue. And our next report is from the Discipline and Client Attorney Assistance Subcommittee. And that is chaired by Christina Davis, who is joining us via Zoom. Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I have the report from the DCAP committee. The DCAP committee has been busy reviewing the recommendations made by the Public Protection Grievance Review and Client Security Fund Task Force report. You may recall that the board referred this report to the DCAP committee in June. As we previously reported, we've been collecting data about the disciplinary system. We've also conducted interviews with grievance committee chairs and the Client Security Fund chair and its staff. The subcommittees are wrapping up their work, and the full committee has a meeting scheduled for April 11th to determine how it wants to present the information to the board. Our goal is still to be able to present our recommendations at the April or June board meeting at the latest. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Are there any questions or comments from the directors? Being none, we'll move forward with our next agenda item, which is from the Administration Committee and our chair, Rebecca Steely-Brooker.
The Administration Committee recently received recommended changes to the Texas Rules of Civil Procedure from the State Bar Court Rules Committee. The recommended changes specifically involve Texas Rule of Civil Procedure 193.7 and the authentication of documents. Today, the Executive Committee can decide whether to approve the referral of the recommendation to the Supreme Court of Texas for consideration. Assuming the Executive Committee approves the referral, as well as the full board when it meets later this month, there will still be an opportunity for review by the Supreme Court and its Supreme Court Advisory Committee before any changes would potentially. It would ultimately be up to the Supreme Court whether to adopt a change. And if the court was considering a change, there would generally be an opportunity for public comments and so forth. So specifically, Rule 193.7, the Court Rules Committee has recommended amending this rule regarding the authentication of documents. Under the current version of the rule, a party's production of a document in response to written discovery authenticates the document for use against the party in any pretrial proceeding or at trial, unless within 10 days or a longer or shorter time ordered by the court, after the producing party has actual notice and the document will be used, the party objects to the authenticity. The proposed change would clarify that a party must make a specific reference to a document in order for the objection period to be triggered. So as you can see in the memo that's contained in your materials from the Court Rules Committee, that the proposal basically adds the word specific in one place in the rule. Importantly, that's the only proposed change to the rule itself, is adding that word. But the Court Rules Committee has also recommended amending the comments to the rule and to add more clarification, including that a general reference to all documents produced by a party is insufficient for purposes of triggering the period allowed for the objection. The Administration Committee met in March and we voted to approve this referral of the Court Rules Committee's recommendation to the Supreme Court for consideration. But on behalf of the Administration Committee, I move that the Executive Committee approve the referral of the recommendations of the State Bar Court Rules Committee regarding Texas Rule of Civil Procedure 193.7 to the Supreme Court of Texas for consideration.
Coming from a committee, there is no second required, but is there any discussion in the room? Anybody?
I have. Okay.
Without any further discussion, all directors who are in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Say nay. There being no opposition, it's unanimously approved. Thank you, Ms. Our next report is from the section representatives to the board, and at this time, I'd like to call on Ms. Deborah Cordova.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning. As previously reported, the Council of Chairs will be held on May 16th and will invite 2 people from each section. The section representatives to the board nominations will go out for a large section representative and a medium section representative this week. So if you know of someone that has a history of section work that would be a good candidate for this position, please have them apply. They can also request a nomination form by contacting Tracy Knuckles. The sections were notified yesterday about the Supreme Court of the United States decision in McDonald, and they are thrilled. The sections department and the legal department are also working with the sections individually and as a whole to make sure that they are aware of and in compliance with the recent changes to the board policy manual as we move forward towards the next legislative session. This concludes my report, Madam President.
Thank you, Ms. Cordova. Are there any questions or comments from the directors? There being none, we'll move forward, and our next report will be from the Texas Young Lawyers Association. So I'd like to call on TYLA President Janine Novosad Rispoli.
Morning. I will start with our nominations and elections report. We have 2 wonderful candidates who have hit the road for the election and have heard reports from both of them and from our affiliates that they have been making really great. So we have Laura Pratt, who is our current vice president, and she is out of Lubbock. She's very hardworking, as is Courtney White, our other candidate. She is a second-year director that has been involved heavily in so many projects that she had a lot of great things to put on her campaign. So Courtney is out of Amarillo. This was a small city here for us. So if you know any young lawyers who have not already voted, please encourage them to vote. It's the same email that everybody gets with the state bar president candidate-elect as well. So since the last time we've talked in March, so last month, we launched our Civility for All website. That was our major project funded by Texas Bar Foundation. And I just have goosebumps thinking about this labor of love that we've had all year on just encouraging people to be kind, to be civil, to have these conversations. And this specific website, the Civility for All that was launched help from the Bar Foundation, is for educators and students all over Texas. So we want to start them young, start them early. We would rather them think about the friendships like Scalia and Ginsburg and Michelle Obama and George W. Instead of thinking about Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that one, please do. It's called Civility for All. It is going to be TEEPS, or already is TEEPS qualified. So educators that you know and love can specifically plug all the resources in to the matter that they have. Then we also kind of in a fun educational way as well, but our adult directors have also enjoyed it. We have coloring pages for a lot of these just really specially civil lawyers. So we've got RBG and Scalia coloring pages, which is just kind of fun to know that we have that out there. We are also, obviously, in the last couple of months, we have a push to finish up our government, also TEAC certified government and public service legal jobs. And we are just so excited to have so many of our current directors and past directors and our liaison, Justice Floyd, involved in that one. So keep your eye peeled. We've got a lot more still coming. And, you know, as with the presidential-elect campaign for the bar, we have two great candidates, and our future is just very bright. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the last couple of months. So, and just in case anyone was worried, either way that our election goes, we will have another blonde TYLA president in 2 years. So I'm very excited about that, but thank you, and yay for our little celebration yesterday.
Thank you, Janine. Thank you for that great report. At this point, it's our time to ask our General Counsel, Ross Fisher, do you have a report for us? So now we'll go ahead and retire into executive session. It's 10:14 and the State Bar Board of Directors Executive Committee will now recess the open meeting and reconvene in closed session as authorized by the Texas Government Code Section 551.071 for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel, including regarding pending or contemplated litigation, including McDonald v. Firth in the U.S. Supreme Court and Bennett v. State Bar of Texas in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Texas. With the exception of board liaisons and section representatives, all other individuals, including non-essential staff and other guests, need to excuse themselves from the closed session. We will notify the public when we are 5 minutes out from returning to open session. Thank you. Back in 5 minutes? We're on now? Okay. So the time is 10:36, and the open session of the Board of Directors Executive Committee meeting will now reconvene. During the closed session, only matters relating to the consultations with legal counsel concerning pending or contemplating litigation matters were discussed. No action was taken in closed session, and there is no action needed at this time in open session. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this committee meeting. Mr. Calvillo, is there a second?
Second.
Meeting will be adjourned then at 10:36 a.m. Thank you all.